The hardware store's bell chimed as the door flew open. A little boy, no more than 7, stumbled inside, his face red and streaked with tears. "Please, somebody help. They hurt my grandpa," he sobbed, pointing toward the parking lot. Outside, an elderly man lay crumpled between 2 cars, his walking cane broken beside him, while tires screeched in the distance. Before we start this story, tell us where in the world you are watching from. Also, please subscribe to the channel. It will help us to bring you more inspiring stories every day. The autumn sun cast long shadows over Riverside, a small town nestled in the mountains of Colorado, when Frank Morrison, a 72-year-old Vietnam veteran, pulled into the hardware store parking lot. His grandson, Marcus, age 7, bounced in the passenger seat of the old Chevy sedan, clutching a toy soldier. "Grandpa, can we get wood for the birdhouse today?" Marcus asked, his gap-toothed smile brightening Frank's weathered face. Frank adjusted his Marine Corps cap. "That's exactly why we're here, soldier. Your grandma's been asking for one by the kitchen window." Inside the store, the smell of sawdust and fresh paint filled the air. Frank moved slowly, his leg still stiff from the shrapnel wound he'd carried for 50 years. Marcus held his hand, patient and proud to be with his hero. They were loading lumber into the trunk when trouble arrived. 4 young men in their 20s pulled up in a lifted truck, music blaring, exhaust billowing black smoke. They were locals, known troublemakers, sons of privilege who'd never been told no. The leader, a broad-shouldered man named Derek, stepped out wearing designer sunglasses and a sneer. "Hey, old-timer, you're blocking the loading zone." Frank looked around. There were no markings, no signs. "I'll just be a minute, son." Derek kicked Frank's car door, leaving a dent. "I said move it, fossil." Marcus's eyes went wide. "Don't hurt our car." One of Derek's friends laughed. "Oh, he's got a little bodyguard. That's cute." Frank straightened, his voice calm but firm. "Son, I'm asking you nicely. We'll be done in a moment. No need for this." But Derek was high on something more than just substances. He was drunk on entitlement, on years of getting away with everything because his father owned half the businesses in town. "You don't tell me what to do, old man." Derek shoved Frank hard in the chest. Frank stumbled backward, his bad leg giving out. He fell between the cars, his head striking the pavement with a sickening crack. His Marine Corps cap rolled into a puddle. "Grandpa!" Marcus screamed, dropping to his knees beside him. Derek's friends erupted in laughter. One of them filmed it on his phone. "Did you see that? Dude just folded." They kicked dirt toward Frank's face, still laughing as they climbed back into their truck. "Stay down where you belong, old man," Derek shouted before they peeled out, tires smoking. Marcus was crying so hard he could barely breathe. "Grandpa, please get up. Please, Grandpa." Frank's eyes fluttered. Blood trickled from a cut above his eyebrow. "I'm okay, buddy. I'm okay." But he wasn't. His ribs ached where he'd landed. His pride hurt worse than his body. A woman rushed out from the store, phone already to her ear. "I'm calling an ambulance!" Marcus ran inside, tears streaming. "Please, somebody help! They hurt my grandpa!" Across town, at a small garage called Iron Horse Customs, a man named Rex Chains. Malone was welding a gas tank when his phone buzzed. He pulled off his mask, reading the message from his wife who worked at the hardware store. "Elderly vet just got attacked in our parking lot. Young thugs beat him down in front of his grandson. Police say not enough evidence. Father owns half the town." Chains's jaw tightened. He'd served 2 tours in Iraq. He knew what it meant to wear the uniform, to carry those scars. He walked outside where 6 of his brothers from the local Hells Angels chapter were working on their bikes. "We got a situation," he said quietly. Within 15 minutes, they knew everything. Frank Morrison, Marine Corps veteran, attacked by Derek Paulson and his crew. The same Derek whose father, Richard Paulson, had deep pockets and deeper connections. The same Derek who'd walked away from 2 DUIs and an assault charge in the past year. Chains made a call, then another, then 10 more. By the time the sun started to dip towards the mountains, the sound began. Low and distant at first, like rolling thunder. 1 engine, then 3, then 12, then 30. The Hells Angels were riding. At Riverside Community Hospital, Frank sat on an examination table while a nurse cleaned his wounds. Marcus hadn't left his side, his small hand gripping his grandpa's sleeve. "You're going to need stitches," the nurse said gently, "and we should keep you overnight for observation. That was quite a fall." "It wasn't a fall," Frank said quietly. "But it doesn't matter. Nothing's going to happen to them anyway." The hospital administrator had already come by, expressing sympathy, but Frank had seen the nervousness in his eyes. Everyone knew the Paulson name carried weight in this town. Marcus looked up, his eyes still red. "Grandpa, why did they hurt you? You didn't do anything bad." Frank pulled him close. "Some people forget what matters, buddy. They forget kindness and respect." "I hate them," Marcus whispered. "Don't," Frank said softly. "Hate only hurts the person carrying it. We'll be okay." But Marcus's small hands were still trembling. Outside, in the hospital parking lot, the rumble grew louder. Nurses and doctors moved to the windows. Patients in wheelchairs rolled closer to see. The motorcycles arrived like a steel river, chrome gleaming under the fluorescent lights. 37 bikes in total, their riders wearing leather vests adorned with patches earned through years of loyalty and brotherhood. Chains led them, his face set in stone. He dismounted and walked through the emergency room doors, his boots echoing on the linoleum. "I'm here to see Frank Morrison," he told the receptionist. She blinked, intimidated but also curious. "Are you family?" "We're all family," Chains said. "Tell him the brothers are here." Frank heard them before he saw them. The distinctive sound of leather and boots moving in unison. When Chains appeared in the doorway, Frank's eyes widened. "Who are you?" Chains removed his sunglasses. "Name's Chains. I'm a brother. Iraq, 2007 and 2009. Heard what happened to you today, Marine." Frank's jaw worked. "It's nothing. I'll be fine." "With respect, sir, it's not nothing." Chains knelt down to Marcus's level. "Hey there, little man. You okay?" Marcus nodded, wiping his nose. "You were brave today," Chains said. "Staying with your grandpa, trying to protect him. That's what real men do." Marcus's chin quivered. "But I couldn't stop them." "Neither could anyone else in that parking lot," Chains said gently. "But that's about to change. See, we take care of our own. And your grandpa, whether he knows it or not, is one of us. Any man who served is a brother. Any man who got hurt protecting his family deserves protection back." Frank shook his head. "You don't need to get involved. The Paulsons, they own this town. You'll just make trouble for yourselves." Chains stood, his eyes hard. "Trouble's already been made. We're just evening the scales." He looked at the nurse. "When can he leave?" "Tomorrow morning after the doctor clears him." "Good." Chains turned back to Frank. "We'll be outside. No one's going to bother you or your grandson tonight. You have my word." True to his promise, a rotation of 6 bikers stayed outside Frank's room all night, their presence quiet but unmistakable. Nurses brought them coffee. Marcus fell asleep knowing his grandpa was safe. The next morning, Derek Paulson woke up hungover in his father's mansion on the hill. He scrolled through his phone, laughing at the video his friend had posted. "Old Man Gets Wrecked" had already gotten 200 likes. His father, Richard Paulson, sat at the breakfast table reading the newspaper. What's so funny? Nothing, Derek said, hiding his phone. But Richard had already heard. Small towns talk fast. He folded his paper, his expression cold. You put your hands on a veteran? Derek shrugged. He was in my way. You're an idiot, Richard said. But you're my idiot. I'll handle it. He made 2 phone calls, one to the police chief, one to his lawyer. By noon, the official story would be that Frank Morrison had slipped and fallen. No charges would be filed. The video would disappear. Except Richard Paulson didn't know about the brothers watching from across the street. Frank was discharged at 9 in the morning. Marcus held his hand as they walked slowly to the parking lot, where Frank's Chevy had been brought by a hospital attendant. Waiting beside it was Chains and the entire chapter. 37 bikes, their engines idling softly. Frank stopped. What's all this? Chains smiled. Your escort home. And then we're going to have a conversation with the people who think they can put hands on a Marine and walk away. You can't, Frank said. The Paulsons will bury you in lawsuits. They can try, Chains said. But there's something they don't understand. You can buy judges and cops, but you can't buy honor. And you definitely can't buy the respect of 37 men who've lived by a code longer than these punks have been alive. Marcus tugged Chains's vest. Are you going to hurt them? Chains knelt again. No, little man. We don't hurt people just to hurt them. We're going to teach them something they should have learned a long time ago. That actions have consequences. That respect isn't optional. And that some men still stand up when others look away. The convoy rolled through Riverside, a spectacle that brought people to their windows and porches. The roar of engines echoed off storefronts. At stoplights, strangers gave thumbs up. At the hardware store, employees came outside and applauded. They escorted Frank home, where his wife, Dorothy, stood on the porch with tears in her eyes. She'd heard everything. Frank, she breathed, rushing to embrace him. Chains approached respectfully. Ma'am, your husband's a good man. What happened yesterday won't happen again. You have our word. Dorothy looked at the gathering of bikers, their weathered faces and knowing eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for caring. We take care of our own, Chains said simply. That afternoon, while Frank rested and Dorothy fussed over him, the Hells Angels went to work. They didn't go to the Paulson mansion. That would come later. First, they went to the hardware store and collected the security footage the owner had been too afraid to give the police. Then they visited the hospital and got the medical report documenting Frank's injuries. Then they stopped at the homes of 3 witnesses who'd been in the parking lot but had been too intimidated to give statements. By evening, they had everything they needed. Chains called a friend, a lawyer named Sarah Chen, who'd made a career of taking on powerful families who thought they were above the law. She listened to everything, watched the video, and smiled. I'll file charges tomorrow morning, she said. Assault, battery, destruction of property. And I'll make sure the media knows. The Paulsons can't make this disappear if everyone's watching. But Chains wasn't satisfied with legal justice alone. Some lessons needed to be taught in the language that bullies understood. Derek Paulson's favorite hangout was a bar called The Summit, a pretentious place where craft cocktails cost $20, and everyone pretended to be more important than they were. That night, Derek and his 3 friends were there, celebrating their immunity. The video had been taken down from social media, but they'd saved copies. They were planning to make T-shirts. To old men who can't take a push, Derek toasted, laughing. The bar went quiet. Not because of Derek, but because of the sound outside. That familiar thunder. 37 motorcycles parked in perfect formation outside the summit. The riders dismounted slowly, deliberately. They weren't rushing. They didn't need to. Chains walked in first. The bartender reached for the phone, but Chains raised a hand. "We're not here for trouble. We're here to have a conversation." Derek's face went pale when he recognized Chains from the hospital. "What do you want?" "You know what we want," Chains said quietly. "We want you to understand what you did." Derek's bravado returned. "My dad will destroy you." "Your dad isn't here," Chains said. "And money can't protect you from truth. See, we've got video, medical records, and witnesses. By tomorrow, everyone in this state is going to know what kind of man you are. Everyone's going to see you push down a 72-year-old veteran and laugh about it." Derek's friends started to edge toward the back exit, but they found bikers blocking every door. Not threatening, just present. "You think you're tough?" Chains continued. "You want to know what tough is? Tough is Frank Morrison taking shrapnel in Vietnam and still coming home to raise a family. Tough is him getting up every morning with pain that never goes away, but never complaining. Tough is that little boy watching his hero get hurt and still having the courage to ask for help." Chains stepped closer. "You're not tough. You're a coward who picks on people who can't fight back. But here's the thing about cowards. Eventually, someone stands up to them." Derek tried to maintain his sneer. "So what? You're going to beat me up? That'll really prove your point." "No," Chains said. "We're not going to touch you. We don't need to. See, tomorrow morning, you're going to walk into the police station and confess. You're going to apologize to Frank Morrison and his family. And you're going to accept whatever consequences come your way." Derek laughed. "Why would I do that?" Chains pulled out his phone, showing the video. "Because if you don't, this goes viral, and I mean really viral. National news, social media, everywhere. Your face, your name, your daddy's name. Everyone will know. And trust me, kid, your father's business partners won't be happy when his son becomes the poster child for entitled brats who assault veterans." Derek's face crumbled. "You can't do that." "We can," Chains said, "and we will. Unless you do the right thing. It's your choice. Face the music like a man, or hide behind your daddy and become a national embarrassment." The bar was silent except for the hum of the jukebox. Derek looked at his friends, but they wouldn't meet his eyes. He looked at the door, but there was nowhere to run. He looked at Chains and saw something he'd never encountered before. Unwavering resolve backed by moral authority. "I need to think about it," Derek mumbled. "You've got until noon tomorrow," Chains said. "After that, we make our own justice." The bikers left as quietly as they'd arrived, their engines rumbling into the night like distant thunder promising rain. Derek didn't sleep that night. He knew his father would protect him from legal consequences, but he also knew his father couldn't protect him from public humiliation. Richard Paulson's empire was built on reputation and connections. A viral video of his son assaulting a veteran would destroy that. At 8 in the morning, Derek called his father. "I need to talk to you." Richard arrived at the mansion within the hour. Derek showed him the video, explained the ultimatum. Richard's face went red, then pale. "Those bikers are blackmailing you." "They're giving me a choice," Derek said quietly. "We fight this," Richard said. "I'll bury them in lawsuits. I'll have them arrested for harassment." "Dad," Derek said, and his voice cracked. "I'm tired. I'm tired of running from consequences. I'm tired of you fixing everything. Maybe it's time I faced what I did." Richard stared at his son, as if seeing him for the first time. "You don't know what you're saying." "I do," Derek said. "For once in my life, I actually do." At 11:30, Derek Paulson walked into the Riverside police station. He was alone. No lawyer, no father, just himself, and a weight he'd carried for too long. "I'm here to confess to assault," he told the desk sergeant. The sergeant blinked. "Excuse me?" Frank Morrison, the veteran I attacked. I want to confess and press charges against myself." By noon, the news had spread through Riverside like wildfire. By evening, it had reached the state news. By the next morning, it was a national story. Wealthy young man confesses to assaulting veteran after Hell's Angels intervention. The narrative wasn't about the angels being vigilantes. It was about them being what the system should have been, advocates for justice when institutions failed. Frank Morrison sat in his living room, watching the news with Marcus on his lap. The boy had insisted on staying home from school to be with his grandpa. "He said sorry," Marcus said, pointing at the TV showing Derek's tearful confession. "He did," Frank agreed. "Do you forgive him, Grandpa?" Frank was quiet for a long moment. "Forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting, buddy. What he did was wrong. But if he's truly sorry, if he's willing to change, then yeah, I can forgive him." A knock at the door interrupted them. Dorothy answered, then called out, "Frank, you have visitors." Chains stood on the porch with 5 of his brothers. "Wanted to check on you, Marine. See how you're doing." Frank stood slowly, Marcus helping him. "I'm doing better. Thanks to you all." "We didn't do anything special," Chains said. "Just reminded some people what right looks like." Marcus tugged Chains's vest again. "Can I show you something?" He ran to his room and returned with a drawing. It showed stick figures on motorcycles, with "Thank you" written in crayon across the top. Chains knelt down, his eyes unexpectedly misty. "This is the best thing anyone's ever given me, little man. Can I keep it?" Marcus nodded vigorously. Frank extended his hand. "I can't thank you enough. You gave me something I thought was gone. You gave me faith that there are still good people willing to stand up." Chains shook his hand firmly. "You never lost it, Frank. You just needed to be reminded that you're not alone." As the bikers prepared to leave, Marcus called out, "Will you come back?" Chains smiled. "Anytime you need us, little man. Anytime you need us." The legal process moved forward. Derek Paulson was charged with assault and battery. His father's lawyers couldn't make it disappear because the entire nation was watching. Derek pleaded guilty, was sentenced to community service, probation, and mandatory anger management. More importantly, he was required to participate in a veteran mentorship program where Frank Morrison volunteered. Their first meeting was awkward, painful even. Derek couldn't look Frank in the eye. "I'm sorry," Derek said, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry." Frank studied the young man. "Why did you do it?" Derek's shoulders shook. "Because I could. Because no one ever stopped me. Because I thought being powerful meant I could do whatever I wanted. And now? Now I know I was wrong. About everything." Frank sighed. "Derek, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to listen. You're not a bad person. You're a person who did bad things. There's a difference. Bad people don't feel remorse. They don't confess. They don't try to change. You did all 3. Derek looked up, tears streaming. "How can you not hate me?" "Because hate is a poison," Frank said, "and I've lived too long to let poison into my life. What you did was wrong, terribly wrong. But if you're willing to learn, if you're willing to grow, then I'm willing to help you do that." Over the following months, Derek worked alongside Frank at veteran support centers. He heard stories from men and women who'd sacrificed everything for their country. He learned about honor, sacrifice, and the true meaning of strength. And slowly, Derek began to change. 6 months after the incident, the Hells Angels chapter held their annual charity ride for veteran services. Frank and Dorothy were invited as guests of honor, and Marcus came wearing a tiny leather vest that Chains had custom made for him. The ride drew over 200 motorcycles from across the state. The sound was deafening, beautiful, a symphony of chrome and thunder. At the rally point, Chains spoke to the crowd. "We ride today for the men and women who wore the uniform. We ride for Frank Morrison, who reminded us why we do this. And we ride for Marcus Morrison, who showed us that courage has no age limit." The crowd erupted in cheers. Marcus stood on a chair, waving to everyone. Frank stood beside him, his arm around his grandson, his heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. Derek Paulson stood at the edge of the crowd, uncertain if he belonged. Frank saw him and waved him over. "You're part of this too," Frank said. "Redemption means being welcomed back." Derek's eyes filled. "Thank you." As the sun set over the mountains, the riders prepared to depart. Chains walked over to Frank one last time. "You changed a lot of lives, Marine. You know that?" Frank shook his head. "You did that. You and your brothers." "No," Chains said. "You showed us why we do what we do. You reminded us that standing up for what's right never goes out of style." Marcus hugged Chains's leg. "Will you come to my birthday party?" Chains laughed, ruffling the boy's hair. "Wouldn't miss it, little man." That night, as the Morrison family drove home under a star-filled sky, Marcus asked, "Grandpa, when I grow up, can I be like those bikers?" Frank glanced at his grandson in the rearview mirror. "You already are, buddy. Being like them isn't about the motorcycle or the leather. It's about standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves. It's about loyalty, honor, and never letting fear stop you from doing what's right." "I can do that," Marcus said confidently. "I know you can," Frank said. "You already have." Dorothy reached over and squeezed Frank's hand. "We're lucky," she whispered. "We are," Frank agreed. "But more than that, we're surrounded by people who care. And in this world, that's everything." As they pulled into their driveway, the faint sound of motorcycles echoed in the distance, a reminder that somewhere the brothers were still riding, still watching, still standing guard for those who needed them. Epilogue. 3 years later. Marcus, now 10 years old, stood beside his grandfather's workbench. Frank was teaching him to build birdhouses, just like they'd planned to do that day in the hardware store parking lot. "Grandpa, tell me the story again," Marcus said. "Which story?" "About the day the angels came." Frank smiled, setting down his hammer. "I've told you that story 100 times." "I know, but I like hearing it." Frank pulled up a stool and sat down, his grandson settling beside him. "Well, it started on a day when I thought the world had forgotten what kindness looked like." As Frank told the story, Marcus listened with rapt attention, the same way he always did. And hanging on the wall above them was a photograph. Frank, Dorothy, Marcus, and Chains, surrounded by 37 bikers, all of them grinning at the camera. Below the photo, mounted in a frame, was Marcus's crayon drawing that Chains had kept. And beside it, a plaque that read, "Honor doesn't retire. Brotherhood never ends. Stand for those who can't stand for themselves." Outside, the Colorado wind whispered through the trees, and somewhere in the distance, if you listened carefully, you could still hear the echo of engines, of thunder made from loyalty, of a promise that still held true. We take care of our own. If this story moved you, hit that like, subscribe, and bell icon. It helps us share more powerful stories of loyalty, kindness, and humanity. Tell us in the comments, would you stand up for a stranger like they did? Until next time, stand strong and stand together.